and he had to work for it because it was Marcus Siebert who started from pole position and led the early running, but Drugovich getting the advantage following a safety car, precipitated by the man we're watching now, Javier Gonzalez, spinning off into the gravel trap at turn 4. And with Drugovich able to fight his way through, Marcus Siebert finished as a runner-up, with Ben Viscal completing the podium and also being the top rookie. So here is the Argentine driver, Marcus Siebert, who is third in the championship standings, and his principal rival for third in the points, Mateus Iorio, has finished in the points every single race this year. And what that actually means for the Brazilian driver is that he will have to drop points at the close of play today. And so the next point situation is very favourable to Marcus Siebert. Here's David Schumacher, who finished 4th yesterday. He was also 2nd in the rookie race and drove extremely well, losing out eventually for a place on the podium to Viscal, but right on the pace, the RP Motorsport driver, in his 2nd outing in the category. Schumacher was spectacular at times in Jerez, and then yesterday in qualifying he really seemed to get the best of the trickier conditions. So here is Ben Viscal then, yesterday's rookie championship race winner, and indeed the rookie champion for 2018. He's had one outright race victory to his name already this year. That came at Silverstone back at the start of September, but thereafter he has been driving very, very well. And here is the champion, Felipe Drugovich, and Drugovich has been pretty much unassailable this season. He's only been defeated twice, once in the opening event of the year in Estoril, and then that victory, and that was to Marcus Siebert, and then the victory to Viscal at Silverstone. It's been Viscal who's been finishing in 2nd place for the meat of the season, but Drugovich has been near enough unbeatable as he peels into the pit lane, having completed an outlap. And for the RP Motorsport team, it's their 2nd year where they've really had a driver who has been able to stamp their authority all over the championship, with Harrison Scott taking the title last year, and Felipe Drugovich looking set, well, he's already done it this year, but looking set to be even more dominant, particularly as the Brazilian actually wrapped up the crown in Monza. So what we can expect from this qualifying session is they will probably spend the first half of the session on a slightly older set of Michelin tires, just making sure that the car and setup is doing exactly what it ought to be doing, and then bolting on a fresh set of Michelin tires for the 2nd half of the session, and that's where we'll see the times that will form the grid. Nonetheless, David Schumacher out on a flying lap at the moment. As we have a look at Dev Gore pushing a little bit too, well, very hard, in fact, launched into the air over the curbs. That's the exit of turn 13. And Gore, a retirement yesterday after he tangled with Aldo Festante. That provoked the 2nd safety car of the race. So we return to this lap from David Schumacher. He's been quick and easily through the 1st sector on the lap. Comes the end of the 2nd sector now, even further up, 1.5 seconds over his rivals. Marcus Siebert also coming towards the end of a lap. As I say, these initial laps unlikely to set the grid for the race, but it is a good indication of who has got the setup that they want for this morning, because yesterday the teams were all running a slightly interim setup, the track really greasy and slippery. As across the line goes Marcus Siebert, and that is not an indicative time at all, 1:49.8. Some 8 seconds or so away from the sort of pace that we would have expected David Schumacher to be setting, but he, like his RP Motorsport teammates, has peeled into the pits. So Siebert progressing on his way. And the Campos Racing team, of course, team with a great pedigree in this championship. Most recent title success coming 2 years ago when Leonardo Pulcini took the crown. As Ben Viscal begins to wind up his pace, the Dutchman with the Teo Martin Motorsport squad. And the stiffly sprung suspension of these Euroformula Open cars, really great fun for the drivers to pilot around the circuit. but set up absolutely key here at the Circuit de Barcelona Catalunya. It's a track with a lot of mid-speed corners, getting the balance between aerodynamic and mechanical grip just right. Also the fact that, not so much as actually, it's very still, but a track that can be plagued by crosswinds and the like, which can make it particularly tricky as Fiscal accelerates through, and that is the quickest time of the session, a 1:38.910 for the Dutchman. And yesterday in qualifying, he was only able to line up in 6th place, had to really race his way through the pack. Let's another look, Fiscal really pushing, and that is a perfect illustration of the knife edge that these cars are on in terms of they have all the grip in the world until they have absolutely none at all. So Fiscal accelerates out of turn 5, down through turn 6, midpoint of the lap pretty much here, then climbs up through turns 7 and 8, into the very quick turn 9, the right-hander, the car glued to the road, and that then propels him downhill towards the heavy braking zone at turn 10, where we saw plenty of action in yesterday's race. This lap, a very, very slender improvement on the last. At the moment, Fiscal, the only driver of 2 who've dipped into the sub 1:39 bracket. A little bit neater though, through turn 13 and a lap ago. We'll find out in a moment whether or not that means that Fiscal was just neater or carrying a little bit less speed, possibly. Cross line he comes then, and it is an improvement, and it was an improved final sector as well, by quite some margin. A 1:38.813 then for Bent Fiscal. Lucas Dunner has come up into 2nd place in the Drivex car. Very briefly, Marcus Siebert immediately pops back into 2nd, with then Dunner's teammate Patrick Schott on his debut, currently in 4th, ahead of Brad Benavides, another debutant in the Euroformula Open this weekend, because of course, as is traditional here in the season closing rounds at Barcelona, we often see a number of drivers evaluating a move to the category for next year, taking the opportunity to step up from Formula 4 competition and the like. It's neither Siebert nor Fiscal at the moment looking likely to improve on this occasion. Caelan Frederick just pops up into 7th place, another of the RP Motorsport runners. The track rubbering in nicely. There was a quite heavy dew overnight. It was a little bit damp this morning, but it's really burnt off already in the early morning sunshine, and the track had rubbered in beautifully during the course of yesterday's racing. Also been other cars out on track already this morning, just clearing away any muck that was residual from yesterday. So perfect conditions for the drivers to set a good time. This lap doesn't look like it's going to be an improvement for Siebert. We're reaching that point of the session where they might start to be thinking about ducking in to the pits. Siebert's going to come through and complete this lap nonetheless. Now, one of the things that we had yesterday, because the track conditions were as they were, was that the qualifying window for the Michelin time was a little bit wider than we sometimes see, as Felipe Drugovich, this is his first full flying lap of the session, and it looks like it might well be the fastest lap of the session. We will find out as he accelerates through now, and indeed does go quickest to 1:38.423 for Felipe Drugovich. That's almost 0.4 of a second quicker than everybody else. Fiscal remains in 2nd. Javier Gonzalez has come up to 3rd. Cameron Dass into 4th, and then Marcus Siebert, Lucas Dunner in 6th, and Caelan Frederick and David Schumacher 7th and 8th. Guilherme Samara in 9th, and Brad Benavides completing the top 10. So that is the classification, with just under 19 minutes to go in qualifying. Felipe Drugovich navigates on uphill as Viscal coming to the end of another lap, and this one had the makings of being a potential improvement, but he decides to duck pitwards, so he will be plugging in, downloading the data, making the adjustments to the cars, and then coming out probably in about 8 or so minutes for the run that will set, more likely than not, his fastest time of the session. Marcus Siebert, I can see from the commentary box window, which overlooks the pit entry, also peeling to the pit, so we'll rejoin Felipe Drugovich, and Drugovich on the hunt for further improvement, and the lap thus far suggests that that might well be coming his way as he comes through. Indeed it is, it's another 0.4 of a second, or rather it's another 100, well, about 100th of a second actually, but it builds his buffer slightly, a 1 minute 38.351. So the RP Motorsport team watching on. So Drugovich now quickest, Viscal second, David Schumacher has come up to third, Javier Gonzalez then to fourth, Cameron Das fifth, Marcus Siebert in sixth from Lucas Dunner and Guilherme Samaya. Felipe Drugovich on another good lap, up in the first sector. Through turn 9, this is towards the end of the second sector. It is David Schumacher whom he's pursuing as gets on the brakes. Fractional improvement through the middle sector, just 0.03 of a second. All the while, looking like at the moment he's going to be setting something like a 1 minute 38.2. A little bit of a slide as he comes through 13, catches it beautifully, jinks through the chicane, then into turn 16, brings this lap to a close. And across the line then for Felipe Drugovich, and in fact he doesn't quite improve in the end. 0.004 of a second adrift of his best, and that's pretty much where he lost it. That tiny correction of the wheel, microscopic improvement, and indeed deficit in this case. That will have just cost him those fractions of a second. So here's David Schumacher, and he is currently third. He didn't improve in his last lap either. It was a 1 minute 40.4 versus a 1 minute 38.9, which has been his best in the session thus far. Schumacher running with the RP Motorsport team, although it's a different livery. He's sharing the garage with Felipe Drugovich, and he and Drugovich have been the pace setters for the RP Motorsport squad this weekend. See whether or not this lap is going to represent any improvement. A very, very slight deficit through the first sector. Comes the end of the second sector. It's his personal best of the session. A couple of tenths of a second adrift of Felipe Drugovich, but that is not altogether surprising given that Drugovich has got a near enough half-second advantage over the rest of the field. We'll see whether or not Schumacher comes through to complete this lap or peels into the pit lane. And indeed through turn 16, so he needs to find a tenth of a second to pit Bent Viscal at this stage of the session. He doesn't quite do that, a 1 minute 39.106. Great slow motion shot there. Just see there, Schumacher looking through the chicane. That's what these drivers do. They're focused on the road ahead of them and what comes next, rather almost than dealing with what's live in the moment. So we pick up Dev Gore, currently 14th, one of the 3 Carlin drivers, alongside Matheus Yorio and Cameron Das. Yorio and Das had a slightly frustrating day again yesterday. They finished 5th and 6th, respectively. Dev Gore, as we said, was a retirement. Here is Qualy Frederick then returning to the championship, having made his debut in Monza. And yesterday, a slightly frustrating day for Frederick. He got shuffled down the pack at the start, couldn't really make masses of progress up through the order thereafter, and that had the makings of a big moment. The tail of the car attempting to make a bid for freedom. Frederick, though, snapped it back into line. As he comes downhill. Turns through turn 10, then 11, around turn 12. In towards 13. This will pitch him downhill, Qualy Frederick. Through the chicane. And he decides to also bring his run to a close. So we've hit that mid-session lull in terms of on-track activity, where everybody's in the pits, getting the fresh set of the control Michelin tyre that they all run with bolted onto the car. What they'll do then is come out, take a couple of laps to warm up the tyre and go through the necessary heat cycle, and thereafter they will press on. So the RP Motorsport mechanics wheel David Schumacher into position. The car on the jacks, get the new tyres on, they'll plug in the laptops and download the data. You could do what Ben Fiscal's doing and just sitting in the cockpit, thinking through the job ahead, visualising the perfect lap. Dev Gore, meanwhile, continues out on the circuit. And this has been a long run for Gore. He's on his 10th lap. And possibly, after yesterday's disappointment in the race, just looking to get some miles into the car, making sure that it's all to his liking after yesterday. And the repairs that have had to be effected on it overnight. Gore is going to come through and complete this lap. The last tour of the circuit was his best of the session. This one is a little bit better still, a 1:39.856 for Dev Gore. And that's just 1.5 seconds adrift of the best time set in the session by Felipe Drugovich. Wouldn't be unsurprised if Gore were to dart into the pits at the end of this lap. The other car circulating is Alessandro Bracalante, as Lucas Dunnett, debriefing the experience of the session so far. Felipe Drugovich, as always, looking very relaxed in the cockpit. He has had so many pole positions already this year as well. This would be, I might reckon, something like his 11th pole position of the campaign. If indeed you were to set pole. There's Patrick Schott then, making his debut for the DriveX team. And Patrick in the thick of the action inside the top 10 yesterday. Finishing 10th in the event, very impressive on his debut. As Dev Gore winds his way through the third and final sector on the lap. It's just a third of the session to run. He's the only car currently circulating, and it wouldn't be at all surprising to see the American driver peeling into the pit lane. Indeed, he does just that. Javier Gonzalez, poised and ready, waiting for the signal to be released onto the circuit, and already a couple of them are heading out. Matheus Iorio and Brad Benavides out on track. And Javier Gonzalez looking to fire up the car. Matheus Iorio also about to do so. And so this is the section of the session where it really does start to come to life. Will be very, very entertaining. They'll probably have a 2 to 3 lap qualifying window from the Michelin tyre, where they'll be able to get the very, very best out of the tyres. So finding track position is key. Going through the right heat cycle to get the tyre warmed up is also very important. There are very strict rules about weaving around unnecessarily to warm the tyres. The chance to enjoy Fiscal in action. So he's currently second in the session to Felipe Drugovich. Aldo Festante was third from the early running and has just ventured back out onto the circuit, ahead of David Schumacher and Javier Gonzalez. But the question is, will Drugovich be able to make it? 11 pole positions from 16 races or not? We will find out in a couple of moments' time. Lucas Dunner also taking to the track. There's just a couple of them now in the pit lane. Viscal, Cameron Das, Caelan Frederick, Alessandro Bracalante. Otherwise, everyone is out on track. This first lap, they'll just gently get a little bit of warmth into the tyre, not push unnecessarily. And then the lap afterwards, they'll start to build up the pace, and the lap after that, we'll start to see some times being set. There's also a level of brinksmanship here about how late you want to leave it in the session before heading out onto the circuit. Because if you go a little bit too early, you risk, one, being caught with drivers still on their outlaps getting in your way, but also two, you set a time that others can aspire to match or better, as Ben Viscal takes the track now in the Teo Martin Motorsport car. So all 15 cars on circuit, 7 minutes left in the session. We'll start to see the times being set, with the flying lap starting in a couple of moments. Viscal navigates the very long radius hairpin at turn 4, running downhill to the slightly tighter radius left-hand hairpin at turn 5. Before picking up the pace, accelerating on uphill for Ben Viscal. Through turn 9, down towards turn 10. All the while, of course, you can see the clock is ticking downwards. No blue sectors just yet. Everybody's still getting up to speed. And this being an outlap for Viscal, we'll expect that he's going to do at least one more lap before the pace really starts to build up. So through the chicane for Ben Viscal, accelerating out to turn 16. Across the line, just checking his mirrors, seeing if there's any traffic around him. The length of this start and finish straight in Barcelona, towards the heavy braking zone into turn 1. The road falling away relatively steeply, but it's quite a fast entry. And then the speed picks up immediately as you run uphill into turn 3. Circuit layout unchanged pretty much since its construction in time for the 1991 Spanish Grand Prix. And the track that really does force the very best out of the drivers, both in terms of their on-track performance, but also their ability to get the car set up to their liking. It's a dynamic and interesting circuit to watch the cars at work on. Viscal midway through the lap. As here comes Mateus Iorio then. And Iorio should be about to launch into a flying lap, I'd suggest, because he was one of the first drivers to head out on track as he accelerates through now. And that third sector was Iorio's best of the session, which means he is now into that operating window to set lap times with the Michelin tyre. As he picks his way through the opening sequence of turns. Iorio's had 5 podiums in the season so far, a really strong start to the year. 4 rostrums in the first 5 races, but then only one third-place finish thereafter, which came in race 1 in Jerez. Partly why Marcus Siebert has been able to reel him in the championship fight. Meanwhile, Felipe Drugovich goes quicker than himself, and therefore anybody else in the first sector on the lap. 20 28.0, I think it was, for that first sector, and he's well up again through the middle sector. And this is shaping up to be a lap time in the high 1 minute 37 second bracket for Felipe Drugovich. Lucas Dunner posts his best lap of the session, goes fifth, a 1 minute 38.963. Now we are starting to see the timing screen transform. Everybody on flying laps as Marcus Siebert goes second, 1 minute 38.415. And Felipe Drugovich quicker than anybody else, a 1 minute 37.878. That is half a second clear of the rest of the field. And he's got great track position, so there could be more on offer here for Felipe Drugovich. Really attacking the chicane, getting everything out of it that he possibly could. Matheus Yorio, the lap that we started with him, has been enough to see him go into fifth place. And Felipe Drugovich, another very good first sector. Sviskal goes second, a 1 minute 37.9, just 79 thousandths of a second adrift of Felipe Drugovich. So the shootout for pole that we've enjoyed for much of the season continuing. And Drugovich up by just 900ths of a second through sector one. See if he can sustain that through sector two. It's the braking zone for turn 10 again. He's almost 2/10 up on himself. Ben Viscal also on an improved lap on this occasion. And Marcus Siebert as well, potentially going to be posting a slight improvement. I don't think he's going to threaten Felipe Drugovich particularly, as Siebert comes past us, doesn't improve in fact. Felipe Drugovich comes past us and does improve, a 1 minute 37.780. David Schumacher next along doesn't improve, a 1 minute 39 for him, as Calum Frederick pops up into fourth, 1 minute 38.6. Just waiting for Ben Viscal to complete a lap as we follow David Schumacher. Here is Viscal, and as you can see, up fractionally for pole position in the first couple of sectors. Let's see how the third sector's gone. Just needs to navigate turn 16. Now accelerates. The timing beam awaits, and Viscal goes fastest. A 1 minute 37.6, 0.17 of a second up on Felipe Drugovich. Just 30 seconds left in the session as well, so they're in to their final laps. This is the last roll of the dice for everybody. Cameron Dass has popped up into fifth, behind Matheus Yorio in fourth. So where are the improvements going to come from? Field very, very tightly bunched, with the exception of the leading duo. Everybody else covered by about 0.8 of a second. So the checker flag comes out to close the session. Felipe Drugovich, I can tell you, is not looking likely to make an improvement. It's Viscal and possibly Marcus Siebert who are on the march. Siebert takes the flag, doesn't improve. Drugovich takes the flag and doesn't improve, so it is going to be Ben Viscal for pole position unless somebody else does something phenomenal. David Schumacher up into fifth with a 1 minute 38.6, so just over a second adrift of Viscal's mark. Yorio's come through, he consolidates fourth. Cameron Dass, who's currently in sixth, unlikely to improve. So Viscal doesn't need to complete this lap because he's already done enough for pole position. He's going to anyway through the final turn. Takes the checker flag, no improvement on that lap, but it is a second pole position of the year for Ben Viscal, and rather a third pole position of the year, fourth pole position of the year for Ben Viscal and the Teo Marti Motorsport team. And Viscal finding the pace late on in the session to edge out Felipe Drugovich, with then Marcus Siebert in third, Lucas Dunner through to take fourth on his very last lap of the session, Matthias Iorio to 5th, David Schumacher in 6th, ahead of Cameron Dass and Caelan Frederick, and Aldo Festante and Javier Gonzalez completing the top 10. Jesus Pereira, principal of the GT Sport organisation, goes to offer his congratulations as we have a look then at the classification with Viscal from Felipe Drugovich, then Marcus Siebert and Lucas Dunner, a rapid row 2. Matthias Iorio from David Schumacher on row 3, and Cameron Dass and Caelan Frederick, Aldo Festante and Javier Gonzalez completing the top 10, with then to the second half of the field, Brad Benavides into 11th from Guillaume Smyth, who'll be disappointed with 12th. Patrick Schott 13th from Dev Gore and Alessandro Bracalante. We will be back this afternoon for the final race of the Euroformula Open season. It gets underway just after 1 o'clock Central European time. We'll see you then.